Holy smokes. Excuse me. Holy smokes. Emergency. PATC live breakfast show. Holy smokes. We are live. We are live. Welcome into college football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and your friends. If you want to support this college football rebel outpost, the home for college football sickos, with a donation, just hit that $ where you make a comment and I'll get you super chat as quick as I possibly can. Welcome everybody into the studio that sits on the corner, the very corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to become a legend. With your comments in the chat room and with your phone calls later in the show. Holy smokes. Wow. Where do we start? Notre Dame and Clemson signs a 12-year scheduling agreement. Wow. And let me start the live show by taking an L. I said here on this show, in front of the camera, I said, I do not believe that it would be easy, that Clemson, a Florida State, Miami, would go ahead and schedule Notre Dame every single year if the school leaves the ACC. But that's exactly what this scheduling agreement does. Clemson and Notre Dame, we're going to be going through the article. Clemson and Notre Dame have signed a 12-year agreement. It supersedes the ACC contract. In other words, if Clemson does leave the ACC, goes to the SEC, plays a 9-game conference schedule in the SEC, this scheduling agreement would still be a happening. This is great news for Notre Dame. We've been talking about, so let me take the L. We knew, per the ACC agreement, the settlement, part of Florida State and Clemson getting out of the courts, that Clemson was going to be playing Notre Dame every single year. But that was reported and understood by myself and I think everybody else that was going to be happening for, for the next 5-6 years. That agreement wasn't going to be there wasn't going to be a separate agreement between Clemson and Notre Dame that lasted 12 years. But that's exactly what happened. They've been working on it for months. It happened. This is great news for Notre Dame. If Notre Dame, we talked about their vulnerabilities. I kept asking the question, how does Notre Dame keep their football scheduling value up to maintain their football independence? Well, this is one of the answers. This is a big answer. They get a scheduling agreement with Clemson. Helps Notre Dame greatly. Once again, Notre Dame gets what they need out of the ACC and its schools. Now, there's still a lot of other things out there. If the ACC collapses, it's still going to affect Notre Dame in being able to maintain the football independence. However, the big question this morning on an emergency live show, this was not scheduled. Again, you got to keep your head on a swivel if you are part of the PATC family. The question is the ACC going to collapse? Is the ACC going to lose their top brands? We know at Peek Around the Corner, we believe this is going to come out in this month, that there has been certain ACC schools that have been spending a lot of time on trying to create a pathway out of the conference. Those stories are coming up next. But this morning, Miami's athletic director, Radakovich, talks about bifurcated ACC. A bifurcated ACC, the possibility that the ACC could split into divisions. Brand schools versus non-brand schools. That the ACC, that he's looking forward to discussion of splitting up the ACC into 2 separate divisions. Making sure that the brands play each other more often and the non-brands play each other more often. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, a dissolution of the ACC without the lawyers. Relegation in the ACC without the lawyers. Wow. Look, we know about the power of economic consolidation, right? We know that brand versus brand, pitting those brands versus brands together more often was what the media partners wanted. It is why USC joined the Big Ten. There's a lot of reasons why all this is going on. Brand versus brand. And now Miami's athletic director is talking about the ACC splitting the conference, having brand versus brand, non-brand versus non-brand. Now, holy smokes. Wow. And if this does happen, if you are considered a non-brand in the ACC, I mean, you are already falling behind. Okay, with this viewership number revenue distribution within the ACC, with this brand initiative, with this success initiative, with this unequal revenue sharing going on in the ACC, you are already creating some of these AC schools are never going to get off the mat. Never going to get off the mat because they're not going to have the viewership money. There's already money being taken away from these ACC schools, the bottom half of the conference. And now you're talking about splitting them up in two separate divisions. Wow. Oh, okay. So we're going to go through all this. Let me do a roll call. Notre Dame gets what they want. A 12-year scheduling agreement with Clemson. Man, we got Miami's athletic director talking. We've got a breaking news. Brett Yormark signs an extension with the Big 12. He's going to be the Big 12 commissioner for many years to come. We've got breaking news all over the place. Welcome on in. If you have not yet subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends. James Foster is in the house. Florida Man is here. Larry the GM, Chiefs fan, Moth Prof, Bo Weevil, John Dry Coy is in the house. Bill G, Daniel Gorby, the Osceola Trucker, George Holton, Amac, Heelan, Florida, the Red Raider, Laura Weiss, Saved by Grace, the Evil Badger, Jeff Olson, Good Morning Sickos, Chef Mall, Antoine Johnson, Sun Devil, Dave B, Matthew Knives, scoring goals left and right in the NHL playoffs. Holy smokes. The Golden Gopher, Florida Man, Patrick Baylor Bear, West Virginia Walrus, Jeff Keyes, the Hokie, Nick Boardman, Virginia Tech. I mean, Virginia Tech is going to be playing Notre Dame less and less. Clemson less and less. How does Virginia Tech feel about all this? What's going on? Exactly where does, if you split the ACC into separate divisions, who is a brand and who is a non-brand? Mick Stevens is in the house. Let's see here. John Jai, Devil Frog, Roman, Maroney. The ACC is doing all they can to keep up with the Big Ten and the SEC. The ACC is doing all they can to stay ahead of the Big 12. Right? Notre Dame is doing all they can to keep the ACC intact. The top brands of the ACC are doing all they can to get out. But if they can't get out, they want the conference to be structured. And I don't know how else to say it. They want it structured, basically dissolution without the lawyers. If you take what the Miami athletic director is saying seriously, and I would, holy smokes, the almighty Finn is in the house. Hope this doesn't mean Florida State is stuck in this godforsaken conference. 2 separate media agreements? No, I don't. No, but they might as well be, right? If you're going to have all the brands in one division playing each other, they're going to get all the viewership. And with this unequal revenue sharing, they're going to suck the non-brands ACC schools out. They're burying these guys. They're burying them. All Notre Dame wants, all that Notre Dame needs is to drink your milkshake. To drink your milkshake. They've got an underground tunnel. They've dug in the ground from South Bend, Indiana, all the way in the ACC country, and they're sucking up your milkshake. They don't have to stand near you. They don't have to be ACC. They can be independent. Now they just signed a scheduling agreement with Clemson. They still have this scheduling agreement, this ACC scheduling agreement with Miami, with Florida State. You've got the Miami athletic director. We're going to get to the story talking about possible divisions, brands versus brands, non-brands versus non-brands. The bottom half of the ACC are getting sucked dry. Now you might say, well, they don't bring much value. Well, they bring some value, but it's all being sucked out. You are burying them. Wow. This, we'll see if this actually happens. But for the athletic director of Miami to actually say this, and it's on an ESPN report, holy smokes, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just telling you, if you are a Boston College, if you are a Syracuse, if you are a Duke, Duke could be in the non-brands section. Who knows? Who knows what is going on there in ACC country? None of you are going to be, you're already going to be playing Notre Dame a lot less. You're already going to be playing Clemson a lot less. You're going to be playing Florida State a little less. You're going to be playing Miami a little less. Now possibly you're going to be playing North Carolina a little less. Maybe a Louisville, maybe a Virginia Tech. And whatever those other 8 or 9 ACC schools, good luck. This could be dissolution without the lawyers. Relegation without the lawyers. And this is another great indication. Another great indication that automatic qualifiers, automatic bids are going to be happening. Because now these schools are saying, okay, we'll just play each other as much as possible so we can get as much media money. It don't matter if we rack it up the losses, because the only thing that matters is our conference record. If we can get in the top 2 spots. Wow. Okay, let's go to our big stories here. We got a lot to get to. Holy smokes. John Grove, the Yormark News suggests the Big 12 is unified on private equity. I heard your Timberwolves had some interest in him. Could just be a leverage move on his part. I did not hear about the Timberwolves. Interested in what? What type of job would he have? The Timberwolves are getting new ownership, right? And they've got Tim Conley as their general manager, as their president of operations, whatever you call it. Tim Conley calls the shots, and there's probably nobody better than him at his job. So I don't know why they would want Yormark. Honestly, I do not. This is the best that the Timberwolves have been situated in since the beginning of their creation as a franchise. Thank you, John Grove, for your super chat. I do appreciate it so very much. I do think the Big 12 is unified. We aren't even on private equity. Either yes or no, but we do think they are unified. We reported that about last week or the week before. Thank you so much for your kindness, John Grove, helping us keep the lights on. I do appreciate it. Let's go first to the Brett Yormark news. Amanda Kristovich, Front Office Sports. Source confirms the Front Office Sports that the Big 12 has extended its existing contract with Commissioner Brett Yormark. The original deal ran through 2027. The new one will go through 2030, ESPN reported first. And of course, that is about the time that the Big 12 next media contract is going to be negotiated, around 2029, 2030. And it sounds like Brett Yormark will be the one in the captain's chair in Big 12 country. Very interesting. Brett Yormark, he's going to be the commissioner at least for a while in the Big 12, and that is great news for the Big 12. Great news for the Big 12. Okay, let's get to the big news here. Massive news. Again, we have PATC. We did take the L on, we did not believe Clemson would be signing a 12-year scheduled agreement outside of the ACC agreement with Notre Dame. We believe that if Clemson got a power to invite, that they wouldn't be playing Notre Dame every year, but Clemson will play Notre Dame every year. Now, of course, contracts do get broken, right? This provides stability for Clemson and Notre Dame, but these agreements, scheduling agreements, often get broken. But again, the agreement as of today was made. So we have peek around the corner, got to take an L. And Notre Dame, this helps them be able to keep that top tier football scheduling slate with NBC. We still believe that Notre Dame, if the disruption is big and large, that it is going to affect Notre Dame's independent football program. But this is a big help for Notre Dame to keep their football independent program. This is a big, big deal. David Hale, ESPN. Clemson and Notre Dame are set to announce their 12-year scheduling agreement that will pit the two college football powers against each other annually through 2038. The Tigers, the Irish, have a recent history of marquee showdowns. The last met in 2023 when Clemson won 31-23. And the schools believe the new agreement, which begins in 27, could be the start of a top-tier rivalry. Now, we reported long ago here at Peek Around the Corner, first in our Cloak and Dagger membership-only episodes, we reported over a year ago that the annual rivalry game between USC and Notre Dame was probably going to stop in 27. They would still play each other, USC and Notre Dame, but not every single year. Well, this is a great replacement for that, right? Notre Dame playing Clemson every single year up until 2038. It's been such a great rivalry, and we want to see it happen every year. Notre Dame Athletic Director Pete Bavacqua said, it's historically been a great back and forth. I think we could see it continue to develop into one of the great rivalries in college football. Clemson and Notre Dame have played 8 times, but many of their matchups have been marquee events. In 2015, Dabo Swinney captured attention for calling Clemson's 2-point win over the Irish in the midst of a downpour a bring-your-own-guts game that helped set the stage for the Tigers' first college football playoff appearance. In 2018, Clemson beat the Irish 30-3 in the Cotton Bowl before winning a national title 2 weeks later. In 2020, as Notre Dame played as a full-time member of the ACC due to COVID-19 scheduling concerns, the Irish won a shootout in the regular season only to fall to Clemson in the ACC championship game. Both teams made the playoffs that year. For both schools, however, the agreement has practical implications. Notre Dame ensures a marquee matchup on its schedule as it hopes to build a playoff resume as an independent. Not just for the resume, but for that contract with NBC. For Clemson, an annual game against one of the biggest brands in college football figures to juice ratings for the Tigers as the ACC begins a new era in which revenue is distributed in part based on TV ratings. Once again, there is no evidence, no news, nothing to suggest that the ACC revenue pie is growing during all of this. It's just how the revenue is being distributed. Clemson is going to get more of it and more of it. And Florida State is going to get more of it and more of it. And Miami is going to get more of it and more of it. But the other ACC schools are going to be getting less and less of it. Is the conference getting stronger or is it getting weaker? Are we looking at dissolution without the lawyers? More on that in just a little bit. Hold up, buckle up, brace for impact. The agreement also offers some scheduling flexibility and insurance for both schools as the SEC continues to discuss moving to a 9-game conference slate. The Tigers play South Carolina annually in a rivalry game, but they also have future home-and-home series scheduled against LSU, Georgia, and Oklahoma. That's the Clemson Tigers. A 9-game SEC slate could put some of those future matchups in jeopardy. Though multiple sources told ESPN they do not see an annual SEC ACC rivalry games such as Clemson, South Carolina being canceled. But even if all currently scheduled games remain on the docket, these matchups figure to help with playoff resumes. This locks in a huge rivalry for us with non-conference opponent that's going to be strong year in and year out, Clemson Athletic Director Graham Neff said. The association of national brands like Clemson and Notre Dame create a great fan experience, strong viewership, and value on that is obviously a fundamental component. Clemson and Notre Dame are already scheduled to play in 27, 28, 31, 34, 37, and the new agreement will overlap with those dates. A source confirmed the annual games will also count towards Notre Dame's required 5 games versus ACC opponents. Again, the other ACC schools are hardly ever going to see Notre Dame ever again. If you're not Clemson, Florida State, and Miami, you are barely going to see Notre Dame. You're going to be seeing Clemson less. You're going to be seeing, wow. We'll get more into that in a little bit. All games in this series would remain on the schedule, regardless of Clemson's future conference affiliation, however. And this is where PATC has to take the L this morning. We've got to take the big L this morning. Notre Dame has received some of what they've needed to stay football independence. Because regardless if Clemson goes to the SEC, they're going to keep Notre Dame on their schedule year in and year out. We believe that was not going to be the case. So this is a big victory for Notre Dame. Massive. Now, can you imagine? Let's say Clemson got an invite to the SEC. Let's just pretend that Clemson got an invite to the SEC. They went to 9 conference games. They have a crossover scheduling agreement with the Big Ten. 11 of Clemson's games during the regular season would be SEC conference game, a Notre Dame game, and a Big Ten game. Holy smokes. Now again, these scheduling agreements can be broken, but for now, that is the future. Of course, I still believe Notre Dame's going to have a lot of issues if the ACC collapses. But is the ACC going to collapse? We're going to get to something here in just a moment. Buckle up, brace for impact. Scheduling is expected to be a significant topic at the ACC spring meetings later this month as the league looks to bolster its own playoff prospects. Okay, guys and gals, okay? The month of May is going to matter, right? We got spring meetings later this month, correct? We are going to hear some stories. I'm telling you right now, we are going to hear some stories about at least some of these schools trying to get out of the conference. But if they can't get out of the conference, boy, they are going to change this conference. Scheduling is expected to be a significant topic at the ACC spring meetings later this month. Yes, it goes beyond the scheduling agreement between Notre Dame and Clemson. Again, we're going to get to it at the bottom of this article. Do not leave us yet. Do not leave the chat room quite yet. Buckle up, brace for impact. The Notre Dame agreement, which remained unchanged after the ACC added Cal, Stanford, and SMU prior to the 2024 season, will be one part of those discussions. The Notre Dame agreement, which remained unchanged, will be one part of those discussions. With the Irish now playing both Clemson and Stanford annually, that would just leave 3 other required matchups against the conference. The ACC is looking to maximize those opportunities to create marquee TV events by pitting the Irish against the ACC top teams. Again, Notre Dame going to be playing Stanford and Clemson every year, Florida State 2 out of every 3 years, Miami 2 out of every 3 years, and you've got a viewership number metric into the unequal revenue sharing among ACC schools, I'm telling you, the bottom half of the ACC schools are getting buried. They're getting buried alive. They're going to fall behind the Big 12 schools in resources and exposure, and it could get even worse. Just hold on. Just hold on. Florida State Athletic Director Michael Alford told ESPN he would have no problem playing Notre Dame more than 5 games already scheduled to the 2037. Notre Dame is drinking all of your milkshakes. Going back to 2014, when Notre Dame and the ACC agreed to a scheduling partnership, Florida State will have played the Irish 10 times more than any school in the ACC except Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, your games against Notre Dame are drifting away. Today in college football, more than ever, it's important for strong brands to play strong brands, Alfred said. That helps our brand, as well as all of us within the conference. We've been consistent in that belief for a while now. As you can see in our non-conference scheduling philosophy, it's important for our conference and our media partners. Miami Athletic Director Dan Radakovich echoed those comments, saying, brands need to play brands. The Hurricanes and the Irish have a long and storied history dating back to the famed Catholics versus Convicts showdown in 1988. The two schools currently have 7 future games scheduled, including the season opener this year on August 31st. That will be their first meeting to 2017. Again, Clemson gets this big old scheduling deal with Notre Dame. Michael Alford talking about we're open to more games against Notre Dame. Dan Radakovich talking about Catholics versus convicts. Notre Dame is drinking everybody's milkshake. But this is not even the big news. Are you ready? Is everybody ready in the chat room? Is everybody ready in the chat room? Let me take a look. Is everybody ready in the chat room for what is next? Is everybody ready? We haven't even gotten to the juicy part yet. Give me a yes. John Dry says yes. Mercado says let's go. Larry the GM says yes. CFB Plus said yes. Please hurry. I'm at work. Jeff Olson. Don't delay. Bracing for impact. Tuffy Duffy, yes. Yes. Give us the... Here we go. Here we go. Okay. You asked for it. Here we go. Radakovich says he thinks the ACC needs to explore ways to pit its best teams against each other and maximize non-conference opportunities to create top TV inventory in the increasingly competitive environment, with the Big Ten and ACC harnessing the bulk of the best TV time slots, and the league works to ensure multiple playoff bids as the sport moves towards another expansion of the postseason field. The brands need to play each other more, Radakovich said. That's what has to happen. Do we divide into two divisions? Who gets to play Notre Dame? How are we doing those kinds of things? And if the SEC goes to 9 conference games, we might have to go to 9 as well, with the bifurcated brands and non-brands divide. Woo! So, look, there are 2 straws that is stirring the drink right now in college football. One straw is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, as they get ACC schools to bend the knee again. Notre Dame, remember, they got to fulfill their obligations to NBC if they want to get the top money. And Notre Dame wants to keep the ACC together so they don't have to lose their football independence. The other is the SEC, the Southeastern Conference. The Southeastern Conference, going from 8 conference games to 9 conference games, is a big, big bleeping deal. We've talked about it at Peek Around the Corner. It is going to dry up some of those non-conference marquee games that the ACC schools are going to have with the SEC and other schools and the Big 12 and other schools. Not so much Clemson. They're going to be playing South Carolina. Not Florida. I mean, there are those rivalries that are going to remain between the ACC and the SEC. But the SEC going to 9 games is going to have an effect on other people's ability to schedule valuable enough football schedules. And Radakovich is saying this. If the SEC goes to 9 games, well, we're probably not going to be able to stay at 8 conference games. I mean, so we're going to have to go to 9. And if we go to 9, bifurcated brands, non-brands divide, 2 divisions, 3 divisions. And that is the title screen of our live show today. Holy smokes. If you sit back and you think about it, if you just sit back and think about it, if this is what the ACC does, and, and in return, the non-brands ACC schools remain in an autonomy conference. They get more money in Tier 1 probably versus what they could if everybody separated, if the brand schools separated from them. But in reality, if this happened, this bifurcated ACC, splitting it up into 2 divisions, brands playing brands, non-brands playing non-brands more often, you are getting dissolution without the lawyers. Is this the Magnificent Seven's plan? Is this North Carolina? Is this their plan? Is this Florida State and Clemson and Miami's backup plan? At least to get them to 2030, 2031. Are we heading towards ACC dissolution without the lawyers, without the dissolution of the conference, without half of the conference saying, okay, we're going to go to the North Carolina, according to North Carolina state law, we are dissolving this nonprofit organization by 50%, 50 plus 1% of the vote. We're dissolving the conference. They're basically, if this happens, they're basically doing that without having to do that, without having to bring the lawyers involved, without being sued. And who, Mowing After Dark, how much will SMU spend to be in the brands? Oh, God. Unbelievable. Look. You have, thank you for the super chat, Moen. Let me get to the evil badger, Ryan Willie. Sorry, Clemson fans, but Clemson isn't as big a brand as USC in the opinion of this evil badger. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it so much, evil badger. Thank you for all your generosity. In some parts of the country, Clemson is a much bigger brand than USC. In some other parts of the country, USC is a bigger brand. But Notre Dame and USC have this long, storied rivalry. That is very difficult to replace. But if you have to replace it, Clemson is a pretty good replacement. Really good replacement. Let's put it that way. Thank you, Ryan Willie. Thank you for the super chat. Again, this is an athletic director, Miami, who is saying this out in the open. Okay? What if the SEC goes to 9 conference games? Everybody's wargaming all of this out. SEC goes to 9 games. Every SEC team now only has 3 non-conference games. You know that at least 2 of those are going to be cupcakes, right? Less inventory, less high brand inventory for ACC and Big 12 schools. If the SEC goes to 9 conference games, we in the ACC need to go to 9 conference games. Oh, and by the way, Radakovich is basically saying if we go to 9, that gives us more opportunities to make sure that the biggest brands in the conference are playing each other more often. And to ensure that happens every single year, maybe we should split into divisions. Brand division and non-brand division. He has said it in public. And if he said that in public, Andrea Adelson, ESPN reported this. If he has said it in public, he has said it in private, and the ACC have been talking about it, at least among the Magnificent Seven. Dissolution without dissolution. That is what we're looking at. Adam, prior to this, you had one group trying to leave the ACC and the rest trying to keep it together. Now you have everyone looking with this plan. Mark today's date on the ACC gravestone. It is quite something, isn't it? I mean, it's now again, we'll wait to see if anyone else talks about what Radakovich just talked about, right? We already have big news today. Clemson and Notre Dame are going to be playing each other every single year for the next, up until 2038. We knew before today, according to the ACC settlement, that Clemson and Notre Dame are going to be playing each other every year up until whatever, early 2030s. But now it's all the way to 2038. Big news. Big, big, big news, especially for Notre Dame. But we have an athletic director saying out loud, and it's not just any old athletic director. It's an athletic director of the Miami Hurricanes. Okay? The athletic director of the Miami Hurricanes. Miami Hurricanes, which undoubtedly is on the expansion candidate list for the Big Ten Conference, without a question of a doubt. We have also been pretty clear here at Peek Around the Corner that the Big Ten is not thirsting for expansion. If they can't get North Carolina, if they can't get Notre Dame, and Notre Dame is doing all they can to make sure that the ACC survives in the manner in which the Notre Dame can fulfill all of its obligations with their media partner. If the Big Ten can't get North Carolina or Notre Dame, the Big Ten next target would be Miami, and they don't know if that would be enough for them to expand, right? For the Big Ten, the top two targets and the SEC, North Carolina and Notre Dame. But if you've got a bifurcated ACC, if you've got separate divisions, if you've got brand versus brand, non versus non, and all the brand schools can now take more and more out of that revenue pie, does that change the equation for North Carolina? Does North Carolina still pull the trigger? Because that is the school that would pull the trigger for the ACC implosion to begin. You've got Miami athletic director, talking about if the SEC goes to 9 conference games, we will probably have to go to 9, and we got to look at a bifurcated ACC, separate divisions. He's saying it out loud. My goodness, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you something. The ACC spring meetings later this month, the stories that are going to be coming out, the reports, the speculation, the gossip, the rumor, but the hard reporting from national reporters is going to be dramatic. It's going to be something else. Is there a need is there room, is there space within the ACC to make all of this work? To have this split conference, to make sure you gather enough revenue, enough exposure to the top brands in the conference to satisfy them and to give the bottom half of the ACC schools enough security so they will buy all of this. I don't know, man. I don't know, because I'm going to tell you something. This agreement, if all of this happens, if you have a bifurcated ACC, if all of this happens, you are going to bury some of these ACC athletic departments. They're not going to have the ability to get off the mat. I mean, sometimes, look, the Southeastern Conference, right? You've got programs in the Southeastern Conference that historically, obviously, don't have the ability to compete year in and year out with the Alabama, with the Georgias, right? Right? We all know this. They're not going to be able to compete with the Georgia, Alabama, Texas year in, year out. But because they get the resources, because they get the exposure, because they have the SEC brand, if everything goes right, every one of those SEC schools can rise up and compete. Not yearly, but every once in a while. Look at South Carolina. Historically, a football program that has not been able to compete. Last year they competed. They were great last year. They came this close to getting to the college football playoffs. This year, they're going to be able to compete at a very high level. They're going to be knocking on the door once again to the college football playoffs. We had a year in which Mississippi State and Mississippi played each other as the number 1 and 2 teams in the nation. Ole Miss has risen. Missouri's has risen back up. In other words, yes, you are always going to have top dogs in the SEC. But once in a while, one of those so-called bottom schools have the ability to rise up. Big Ten, look what we saw with Indiana last year. They rised up. Shoot, you had my beloved Minnesota Gophers finish in the top 10 in the country just 5 years ago. The Minnesota Golden Gophers. Because the Big Ten and the SEC schools, they keep getting that revenue, they keep getting that exposure, the bottom half of the conferences. But if you have a bifurcated ACC, where you're basically relegating the bottom half and you're keeping them there no matter what they do, so it's not like relegation. You're splitting them up per brand value. You are permanently burying some of those ACC athletic departments, those football brands, those basketball brands. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Okay, we're going to get to your phone calls. Right now, we're going to get to your phone calls. The phone line, 763-260-1333, 763-260-1333. The lines are open. Give us a call. Talk about anything in college football that your heart desires. Expedition Greg. Oh, something's going on here. Hold on, everybody. Hold on. Something's wrong with the chat. Hold on. Let me get... We got a problem.
From
Chris Kenny.
Chris Kenny, can you hold on for just 1 second here?
Sure.
I appreciate it. I'm having a little bit of problems with something. Let me, there we go. Expedition Greg, I do apologize. We had some issues. Thank you for the gift membership. I do appreciate it so very much. Richard Brookins has already thanked Expedition Greg for his generosity. Both of you, Expedition Greg and Richard Brookins, both of you are knighted cloak and dagger. Congratulations to both of you. Richard Brookins, go to our library of episodes. You can watch all the episodes. They're all open to members. Thank you so very much, Expedition Greg, for your generosity once again. Mr. Kenny, thank you for your patience. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Greg. So this, my relegation thing, whatever you want to call it, I think, well, if it's called relegation or functions as relegation, it's an incredibly idiotic idea. And none of the middle, forget about the bottom, none of the middle tier ACC schools should agree to it. And I'll give my reasons for a second. Maybe what this guy is saying, Radakovich is saying, is less dramatic than it sounds. And in some cases, it's not that different than what the Big Ten and the SEC have done, where, when they got rid of divisions, they did make, to varying degrees of success, I suppose, they did make some effort to ensure some degree of like scheduling balance, so that generally speaking, the historically better programs played each other more often, and the historically more mediocre or struggling programs played each other more often. But they all still played each other to some degree, but it was a way to generate kind of bigger brand matchups, and frankly to ensure a little bit of scheduling fairness to the schools at the bottom of the league that have struggled, so that they could stand a better chance to win more games and get bowl eligible and not get absolutely pummeled by playing the best teams. Now, that's hurt Florida last year, and it's going to hurt them again this year, because if you look historically, Florida's an elite program, but they've struggled and they've got a murderer's row schedule, whereas schools like Missouri and South Carolina, maybe got a little bit of a bump, Vanderbilt, by not playing quite as, deathly challenging a schedule. So it's possible that the ACC could do something similar where, the best brands within the league play each other somewhat more often, without sort of this dividing line where, Wake Forest is in the bottom and Clemson's on top, and they're basically never going to play each other again, and effectively are in two conferences that are just under some umbrella name. That to me is if it's the latter, that's a really stupid idea, not just for Wake Forest, but I don't think it's a great idea for Virginia. I don't think it's a great idea for Georgia Tech. I don't think it's a great idea for Virginia Tech. Like, there's certain schools that are kind of on that cut line. And particularly if you're Georgia Tech or Virginia and you've got varying degrees of value to the Big Ten and the SEC, let's say, Georgia Tech's maybe just a Big Ten play. I don't think I would want to go down this road and kind of get a scarlet letter that I'm somehow like less valuable. Like, we talk about Virginia being valuable. We talk about Virginia being valuable for reasons other than just football scheduling, right? Football strength. Well, I don't know that I would want to like lean into becoming like a permanent second-class football citizen. And like you said, diminishing your athletic program even more when you're trying to stay attractive. Like you don't, yes, the value that UVA in particular brings is beyond its football strength. Like, we all know that. But you also don't want to like pummel your football program into oblivion, because then you've really diminished your value. Whatever value you've got in football is diminished further. And like, why give anybody a second opportunity to think twice? Yeah. So then you say like, well, maybe it's the Magnificent Seven, and maybe it's UVA, and maybe it's, North Carolina State and these other schools that are sort of part of that cohort, and they get to be in the better tier. But like, how does that solve your problem? Like, again, UVA's value isn't in football viewership. So like, if you're trying to generate these bigger games, who had the highest average rating of ACC schools last season? Do you remember who it was?
Probably Georgia Tech.
It was Georgia Tech. So
Brian Murphy has it. Let me just interrupt a second. Brian Murphy has a post up, and everyone's talking about this by what Radakovich said. Everybody is. All the reporters this morning. That's why I came on live here. I don't know if you can see on a screen or anything, but Brian Murphy's
No, I'm sorry, I'm in my car.
Football brands. He's got football brands. Florida State, Clemson, Miami, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, North Carolina State, Georgia Tech. Then he's got question marks. Louisville, SMU, Pittsburgh, Syracuse. Then he's got non-brands. Cal, Wake Forest, Boston College, Duke, Virginia, Stanford. After the top four, honestly, no idea. That's what he's posted. Okay, here's the thing. Here's the problem with this, in my opinion. yes, you want brands playing brands more often to create better value for your media partners. So your conference can make more money so your schools can reap the benefits, right? But if you create a system in which the bottom half of your conference doesn't receive any benefits, they only receive less because the bigger brands are playing the bigger brands. They're not getting more money. If the conference got more money, they wouldn't see it. I mean, this is completely different than like the Big Ten has made it so the big brands can play each other more often. They got rid of divisions. It's this conference, this ACC, if it goes in this direction even more, is basically it's dissolution. It's dissolution. They are separating this conference in half, and they don't have to go through the paperwork. Let me hold on just 1 second. We'll get back to you. Let me and this is another tweet 11 minutes ago. Brian Murphy. Now, we started this program an hour ago, and he's picked up on it as well. Brian Murphy, doing this exercise makes it easy to see why the Magnificent Seven talk started, but much easier. Probably fewer billable hours involved thanks to Florida State Clemson. If you can just bifurcate the ACC and tilt the revenue distribution in your favor. This is dissolution without dissolution. Go ahead, Chris Kenny.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of it, which is why I don't see why any school that's not in that top obvious four, maybe one or two others, has an incentive to agree to this, because you're not growing the pie,
nope.
Right? You're just coming up with a different way to reallocate slices, and you're going to get a smaller one. So it doesn't make sense there. You're taking an active step to sabotage the strength of your athletic program, and or your football program in particular. If you've got any scintilla of a hope of getting to the Power 2, why would you take a step to diminish your value in front of these like suitors that you want? And for no money. And then the third point is, like, if this is what Florida State and Clemson want, then I would say tough. I was about to use a 4-letter word. I would say tough luck. That's a 4-letter word I can use on a family program. Tough luck. If you want to leave. Pay us $170 million. Like, why would Boston College or Wake Forest or Duke or Georgia Tech, for that matter, why would any of them agree to take less and get less, right? They're taking less. Yeah. They get fewer games against those programs. They get less money. They diminish their brand and their standing for absolutely nothing. Then they could just tell these other guys to take a hike.
They're going to be selling less football tickets. It's, I'm getting an echo, Kenny.
Oh, sorry. Well, I'll hang up. You know my point. I would tell him to take a walk. I'd tell him to take a walk.
You got it. Appreciate it. Beautiful. Great call. I mean, it's not just. Again, in every conference, there's the top half of the conference, bottom half of the conference. You want to be playing your big brands more often. Conference has done things to make this happen. But if you're going to split it, if you are going to go down this road, Cranky Tiger says, look, there aren't that many top brands in the ACC. They will have to play the rest of the teams. Don't blow it out of proportion. If you're splitting into two divisions, if you're going to split into two divisions, and if you're going to have 8 brands or whatever, however you do it, that's 7 conference games within your brand. You only have 2 other conference games.
Call from
Brett Taylor.
Go ahead, sir. I did not get the name.
Brett Taylor.
Thanks for calling, Mr. Taylor. Appreciate it. The floor is yours.
everybody just needs to recognize that the SEC and the Big Ten are headed towards some type of super league. We don't know all the details, don't know how many teams or what's going to happen, but all the ACC teams are doing, FSU, Clemson leading the way, is trying to figure out either how to get into the Power 2, the Super League, or find the best possible landing spot if they can't get there.
Yes,
it's
sir.
just a matter of who's going into which conference and how the conferences are the SEC and the Big Ten going to drop some of their teams? Are we going to end up with 48 teams or 72 teams? But that's where we're heading. And the ACC is just saying, okay, we're dissolving. What's the best thing we can possibly do for Boston College and Louisville, and all of those teams are just looking out for their own best interest.
Yeah. I mean, you said it in a very distinct manner. You're right. They're trying to get out, but if they can't get out, they're trying to figure out. They're trying to create their own best landing spot, and that is a very unique and aggressive dissolution without the dissolution of the ACC.
Yeah, I think some of them are trying to figure out how can we convince folks to stay with us rather than go to the Big 12, because FSU and Clemson are gone. Probably North Carolina and Virginia are gone. Maybe Miami and Georgia Tech will get into the Super League. I think they probably will, but as you go down the pecking order, everybody's saying, well, us Boston College and Wake Forest, how can we convince those other schools to stay in the ACC rather than go to the Big 12? Something like that. I don't know all the details, but that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, a great call, sir. I appreciate it. A great call. You put it out there. Call again, okay?
Okay, we'll see you. I'm still listening.
You got it. Beautiful, man. I mean, he's right. He's right. Schools are trying to get out. They're trying to get to the P2. There's some schools, we know that they're trying to get out. Florida State and Clemson won a big victory in the courts. But again, you have an athletic director saying this in the open. I mean, it is the SEC going to 9 conference games is something big, right? It's huge if they do that. Okay, let's go to the next call. Very busy morning.
Call from
Wild Ute.
Wild Ute is on the line. The floor is yours. Wild Ute, let me ask you something. If this actually, I mean, the ACC meetings are going to be wild in May, okay? Mm-hmm. It's going to be wild Ute. All right? College Football Mafia show is going to have 2 live shows every single day, the third and fourth week in May. If they actually do something like this, if they actually talk about this, where they're going to split this ACC in divisions with brands versus non-brands, mm-hmm. and help keep the top brands, close with the Big Ten and the SEC. And let's say a Louisville doesn't go into the brand division. What do you think of Louisville? Mm-hmm. How do you think they would react to all this? And then looking at the Big 12 and saying, Go ahead, Wild Ute. The floor is yours.
From a Miami standpoint, this is absolutely a brilliant stroke right here. It just depends on whose standpoint you're looking at. I know that you had a caller that just spoke about how this is going to hurt the ACC, and if you're a lower level school, why would you ever agree to this? What are you going to do about it? That's what I would say. I'm Miami. I don't want to be in this conference. I'm trying to nuke this conference anyway. I want to get into the Big Ten. I want to maximize my revenue. This is Darwinianism at its finest, and I'm going to bleed you dry because I could care less about your school. That's exactly what this is doing. I'm creating my own division within our conference, the have and have nots. I'm going to suck all the revenue up, I'm going to get all the TV eyeballs. I'm stacking the deck, and I just don't care. Because this is every man for itself.
Okay.
I could give a crap less about Virginia,
Okay.
about Syracuse, about anybody else. I'm Miami, and I'm only worried about Miami.
That is why that is why I knew you were going to go there, Wild Ute. I knew you were going to go there, my man. So that is why I brought up a school like Louisville, right?
Right.
Louisville. I mean, you say why would the schools like Miami and Florida State and whatever give a crap about the bottom half of the conference?
Right.
Well, first of all, it would eventually affect them. I mean, eventually, if your bottom half of your conference deteriorates to where they can't even compete at all, they become a G5, whatever, it is going to eventually hurt the top schools of the conference. But anyway,
if you're looking at the long term,
yeah. If you're looking at
we're
long
talking
term,
about a 5-year time horizon, this is fantastic.
Yeah, but what about a Louisville? If Louisville isn't incorporated into the brand division, then a Louisville is going to be looking at the Big 12, right? Wouldn't they look at the Big 12? Because they're going to be look, this ACC revenue pie is not growing during all this. It's just going to balloon up on one half of the division, and the other division is going to contract. It's going to just implode. It's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And if you're Louisville and you're on the non-brand side, if you are, what would keep you? What would keep a Louisville in that situation? Why would they stay in the ACC non-brand division?
That's a really tricky conversation right there. If you're Virginia Tech, who would be a borderline school, I know that Brian Murphy said that they'd be in the top. I would really push back on that idea too. Virginia Tech, Louisville, and like your Syracuse's, what the heck do you do? It's a tough decision, because if you were to leave for the Big 12, like paying $165 million, this year, next year, it's not actually financially advantageous to jump over to Big 12, given that dollar amount, because of the Big 12 payouts. I mean, I'm just looking at ballpark numbers. It's not a no-brainer like it is for UNC to jump over to the SEC of the Big 10. So it gets a little bit more murky, but every dollar less that you get, if you're Louisville, it makes that decision a little bit more appetizing. But it's still it's not a net win out to jump over to the Big 12 at the moment, until schools start leaving and you've eroded the ACC to a point where there's just no future in it. That's a different conversation, but you probably have to remain in the ACC until somebody actually jumps, and you're just going to get boxed around and beat around and everything else and treated like a third-class citizen in your own conference. There's really nothing else you can do. If the Big 12 payouts were higher, then you probably have an argument to jump. And maybe if the private capital deal actually gets done, maybe that's the swing factor. But at this point in time, the numbers just don't support a jump from Louisville to be the first mover on this. Mm-hmm. So you're stuck. And you're trying to fight, that narrative battle and everything else, but you're screwed. What are you going to do about it? You don't have much leverage in this thing. You're going to get boxed around. You're going to take less money. You're going to get embarrassed, shamed. If I'm a Cardinal fan right now, seriously, if you're a Louisville fan, I'd be so fed up of the ACC. I'd want that so dang bad. I mean, seriously, how embarrassing is this? To have to go through this kind of stuff.
Yeah, as you say, long term, this would destroy the conference. But again, a bunch of schools are only worried about the short term, right? The top brands are only worried about the short term of this.
Yeah.
So, wow. If you got an athletic director saying this out in the open, man, they've talked about it in private, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you got a Virginia.
That narrative everywhere else.
You got a Virginia, okay? They're not. They would be in the non-brand division, no question about it. Even though they're part of the Magnificent Seven, even though I have all the reasons in the world believe that they would be part of the targeting of the SEC or the Big Ten to go along with North Carolina. The ties between North Carolina and Virginia are strong. In fact, we were told that when the Magnificent Seven started happening in subgroups, it was North Carolina and Virginia that started it, not Florida State Clemson. So could they, dividing Virginia and North Carolina into brand and non-brand? Holy smokes. The ACC spring meetings are going to be wild, Jude. Wild.
Yeah, exactly. One last thought, too. Let somebody else jump on.
Yeah.
You asked the question, is this going to keep North Carolina in the conference? Does it make it more viable for them to stay? The answer is a hard no, Greg. Like the dollar difference here, the analysis is such a go today, tomorrow, as soon as possible to the SEC, no matter how you shake out the money.
Yeah.
In the ACC, it's so significantly less every freaking year that it's still a no-brainer go to the SEC as soon as humanly possible. So this isn't providing any stability for ACC. This is just a short-term Band-Aid to get the big brands to get paid more before they leave. It's brutal. It's Darwinianism. So last thought.
You got it. Wow, Jude.
Okay, thanks for letting me go.
You got it.
Take care.
Appreciate it, my man. Talk to you later. And that's another thing. All this, what we're talking about this morning, none of it really helps North Carolina. They're not part of the scheduling agreement with Notre Dame, right? So none of this really helps North Carolina, who is the top target for the SEC in the Big Ten. None of it helps North Carolina to stay in the conference.
Call from
Larry the GM.
Larry the GM, the floor is yours, but can you wait a moment, please? I've fallen behind. Sure. I appreciate it, sir. Ryan Willie, thank you so much for your super chat. In my opinion, Notre Dame is running scared of the Big Ten. There are much bigger brands in the Big Ten than the ACC. Wisconsin will beat Notre Dame in Lambeau Field on September 5th, 2026. So my question to you, Ryan Willie, is when your evil Badgers beat the Fighting Irish in Lambeau Field on September 5th, 2026, is that going to be with Luke Fickell at the helm? Thank you so much for the super chat, Ryan Willie. I do appreciate your generosity. Osceola Trucker, George Holton, becomes a member for the 4th month. Holy smokes. Thank you, Mr. Holton. I appreciate your generosity so very much. The only reason USC is bigger than Clemson is the decades of relevance. Clemson is a more recent power. I would agree with that, Osceola Trucker, and I think Clemson is going to be very powerful in 2025. I think Clemson is going to be a monster this season. Thank you, Osceola Trucker, George Holton. You are cloak and dagger once again. Thank you, sir. Daniel Gorby, thank you for this super chat. How would this even pass a conference vote? 2/3 of the schools would have to be voted yes. I don't see this happening. Daniel Gorby don't think it's even possible, this bifurcated conference. I don't know if it needs a 2/3. I don't know what it needs. I don't know, man. Just talking about this, boy, the ACC meetings are going to be crazy. Larry the GM, the floor is yours. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate it.
Well, Greg, a lot of those comments are good interest for what I have to say. I'll build on something that Mild Ute was starting to talk with you about. And this is going to come across as my typical very direct Larry the GM kind of comment. All right, so Greg, let's just have real talk for a minute. What's the option for most of these teams that people are saying would like? What is the bottom of? What's the future for the bottom of the ACC if they can't keep the conference together under this sort of bifurcated model?
A backfield ACC. a
Right.
backfield.
And what's the media deal for that, Greg?
Very low.
Like 10 to 20 million, right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So, Greg,
Yep.
if the average ACC media value is about 40 million now, I know it's not that, it's up or down from that. Let's just stay with simple math. Let's just say the media portion that is being spread to the schools is 40 million, and then the number is above that is going to performance bonuses. Okay, can you go with me on that?
Yep.
So let's take a number of 40 million and say if you're in the bottom tier of this, you're getting half of that. You're getting 20 million. And if you're in the top of that, you're getting 60 million. And those teams that are on the top also have access to the performance bonuses and that they've been talking about, right? Mm-hmm. And so then you say, well, why the hell would a team on the bottom accept that? Well, they're getting 20 million, Greg, versus in the future that's more than likely way less than that. Now the question is, can this ACC conference stay together? Greg, I don't know, but I will tell you that this idea has a far greater chance of success for them staying together as a conference than where we were last week.
Okay.
Because
I get what you're saying, but let me just throw this in for the sake of discussion, okay? If I'm one of the bottom half of the ACC schools and you're saying, what options do I have on this? Maybe one of the options is saying, no, we're all going to vote against it. And if you want to leave the conference, you give us the exit fee. And then the top half of the conference says, well, then we are going to just leave. We are going to do a dissolution. Screw you. You'd still be making more money here in the conference with us here versus without us being here. Then the bottom half of the conference is going, okay, make our day. Go ahead and leave the conference. Do your dissolution. We're going to sue you, but we're going to get that exit fee money. We are going to get that $165 million exit fee. Because what Wake Forest and Syracuse will probably argue, and other ACC schools, they're probably going to argue the Texas and Oklahoma argument. Mr. Larry GM, Mr. Longhorn. They're going to argue, they're going to say to Florida State and Clemson, they're going to say, look, eventually, if you have the bottom half of the conference being buried in lower resources, lower exposure to where we wither and die versus the bottom half of the Big 12, the bottom half of the Big 10, the bottom half of the SEC, we know that you're going to leave anyways. What you are constructing for us is something that you are going to, because that's what happened to Texas and Oklahoma. Texas and Oklahoma, they, no matter what they did in the Big 12, Texas and Oklahoma were going to leave. No matter what they do in the ACC, the top half of the ACC conference, the top brands are going to leave, either going into the P2 or creating their own third conference, which we've talked about here at Peek Around the Corner. So I'm just throwing this in for discussion. You say, what are the options? They have to say yes to this bifurcated conference. I would say, no, they don't. They just say, look, you want out? You want to create your own conference? You want to get to the P2? Where is that $165 million? Until you pay us, forget you. No, we're not doing this. We're not going to be second-class citizens on our own conference. What say you, Larry?
So, Greg, I have one scenario that makes this conference stay together. And that is convincing Notre Dame to join the conference and giving Notre Dame a 20-year pass on being relegated. And what I'll also say to you is, if you're in the top tier of this conference, you don't get to stay there forever. I think that's where the part of this discussion, I mean, I don't think that's going to, there's no way anybody would agree, like, we're permanently in the bottom tier of this conference. There has to be a mechanism that you can play out of it. That you can be an SMU that probably enters the bottom, but devotes the resources to get to the top. If the ACC was able to have Notre Dame join as a permanent member, I think the ACC would stay together under this model.
Well, all I can say is it's going to be a wild ACC meetings in May. The stories going into the meetings is going to be wild. The stories.
Yeah, they're already wild today, Greg.
Yeah, it's wild today. Yes.
So, Greg, yeah. I mean, what do you think of that, though? I mean, Greg, let's real talk. What's the chances of the ACC conference surviving?
Dividing?
With all 17 of its members right now? 0?
Dividing? Do I think it's 0, the chances? No, I wouldn't put
it
at 0.
No. The chances of the conference as it is today surviving.
Oh, surviving.
Past 2032.
0.
Okay.
Or
what
1%.
Are the chances?
1%. 1%.
Okay. We'll go 1%. What's the chances of this conference surviving in the bifurcated model past 2032? It's greater than 1. It may be 10, but it's greater than 1.
I'll give you 3.
Okay. I think it's more like 10. Now, if you add Notre Dame to the 17 members of the ACC and put in the bifurcated model, what are the chances of that conference
if
surviving?
Notre Dame ain't going to join the ACC conference if they're getting everything they need without joining the ACC conference. And once again, if the ACC doesn't implode, that Notre Dame has a conference for their Olympic sports. If the ACC does not implode, the ACC, Notre Dame is going to be able to keep up the scheduling agreement, especially with the big news today and the 12-year agreement with Clemson. Notre Dame gets everything they want without becoming a member of the ACC. Notre Dame is not going to be a member of the ACC.
Greg, what is Notre Dame's media contract? What do we think it is for the next 5 years?
What do I think their media contract is?
Yeah.
Well, it's based on a sliding scale. If they can have a top tier college football schedule, they're going to get paid top tier money. And now they've just secured their ability to have a top tier football schedule. I would bet that tier 1 money is somewhere in the $50 million range.
Okay, so the answer, Greg, is joining the conference makes that 60 to 70. Because if they join the ACC contract's going up, and so if they're in the top half of the conference and they're getting 150% of the base, and they're competing for the performance bonuses, that number can be 60, 70, or even 80.
Well, I mean, if they join the Big Ten, they would get 80-some million. So it isn't about. It is I understand what you're saying, but Notre Dame signed this agreement with Clemson not to join the ACC, not to join the Big Ten, basically. Notre Dame is trying to keep their football independence. They're not doing all this to join the ACC conference.
Well, I mean, and that's probably I don't disagree with you on that, Greg. I'm just saying that's the one dynamic that really would make this a viable long-term entity, right? And so, because financially, I think it would make sense for most of those top teams in the conference to stay in the ACC if they're getting access to 60 or more like the 80 side of that deal. And if they had Notre Dame in the conference, they'd probably be closer to that number. Now, the bottom is still getting 30, right? So I grant you, it stinks at the bottom, but it stinks at the bottom worse if the top's not even there. If they're bringing in Tulane and UConn and whoever else they're bringing in to survive as a conference, that conference is significantly worse.
Yeah.
So that's what all I'll say, Greg, is that is my thought relative to this. Greg, I actually think this is the model that most of these conferences are eventually going to move to. And that'll be my big statement on the way out. That'll be a nuclear bomb to the whole discussion. I think every one of these conferences is going to move to this sort of bifurcated model before the next 10 years.
Got it. All right, sir. Appreciate
the
phone call there, Jim.
All right, bye.
If these, so I guess
Call from
Evil Badger.
Evil Badger, can you just hold on for one moment?
Yes.
You know, I get and I respect what Larry Jam just said. Illini Ted here in the comments section, it's hard to move up tiers when you don't get near the means that the teams in the top tier are given or have earned over decades and decades of dominance. If you go to this bifurcated conferences, you are just burying the bottom half of the conference. You are. I mean, if the SEC did this, the SEC would not be a better conference. In fact, it would suck. I'm going to be honest. It would absolutely. At least in the SEC, teams can compete against each other. Yes, the top brands are the top brands, and they're going to dominate most of the time. But the way the SEC is structured now, you can have teams rise up once in a while. You can. We just had Vanderbilt beat Alabama. You've had Ole Miss, now they're up. Why, if the SEC did a bifurcated conference, I don't know what people. All that you're doing is destroying competition, which is your product. Georgia is always going to have an advantage. Why would they need more than an advantage? Texas already has the richest athletic department. What more do you need over Arkansas? Do you need to take Arkansas $10 million more from them? What does that do? It doesn't do anything. Really, truthfully. All you're doing is you're definitely not creating a stronger conference. Now, if the SEC wants to split their conference, go ahead. If the Big Ten wants to split their conference, I've always said in 10, 15 years, if the top brands of the Big Ten and the SEC come together for their own conference, that could happen, go for it. But the whole idea of making, everyone talks about how successful the NFL is. But the reason why the NFL is so successful, besides the fact that football is a great game, is you got competition is your product. It's your product. The NFL does so much not to destroy its product of competition. Everything the NFL does is trying to instigate more competition that you don't know what's going to happen in the next season ahead. You've got a draft, you've got free agency, you've got a hard salary cap. But yet in college football, we do everything to destroy the product of competition. The ACC, it's just, I get it. I get people are playing their self-interest. But the ACC isn't getting better because of all this. The ACC isn't going to be something that I want to watch because of all this. A brand division versus a non-brand division. More and more unequal revenue sharing. It's not going to get me to watch it. More eyeballs are not going to be on it. Half of the conference is going to be buried more and more. Why would the SEC and the Big Ten do this to this degree? I don't get it. I do not get it. Go ahead, Ryan Willie. I appreciate your patience. The Eva Badger. The floor is yours.
Thanks for taking my call, Greg. In my opinion, Pitt and Louisville and Georgia Tech, well, maybe not under Georgia Tech, but some of the mid-level brands should immediately call the Big 12 and ask to join their conference, because Pitt and Louisville are just going to get buried in the ACC bottom tier by them doing this.
Hey.
One,
Yep.
Notre Dame only playing like Florida State, Miami, and Clemson. That's gonna devalue the mid to lower tier teams in ACC, and they're not going to be making any money out of it. And the only reason why Notre Dame's playing ACC is they know that they couldn't compete in the Big Ten.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, ACC fans, but it's true. They couldn't compete in the Big Ten.
Yeah. I'm going to show Ross Dillinger's post here. This issue between Notre Dame and ACC is an ongoing discussion. Those at Notre Dame tell Yahoo Sports that they expect all games with Clemson to count as one of their mandatory 5 ACC games. They have time to determine this, as the first unscheduled game isn't until 2029. So the ACC is looking at Notre Dame's and Clemson schedule as part of the annual 5 games between Notre Dame and ACC schools up until a certain date. Notre Dame believes that Notre Dame and Clemson games all the way to 2038 are going to be counted as one of their mandatory 5 ACC games. You see, Notre Dame doesn't even... They want more and more of their games to be played versus less and less ACC schools. Look, Ryan Willie touched upon it, and so have the others. If all this comes about, if Pittsburgh is playing Notre Dame less and less and less, if Pittsburgh is in a so-called non-brand division, if Pittsburgh not going to be able to, they're going to lose more and more money due to unequal revenue sharing based on the viewership numbers alone, because the deck is being stacked against the Panthers. What is happening? You want to be blunt? You want to be honest? What is happening is the ACC. If all this truly came about and happened, remember, you're not increasing the economic pie. You're not increasing the revenue pie of the ACC and doing all this. If this all comes to fruition, what you're doing is you're blasting a hole in the Pittsburgh Panthers' value. You're crushing them. You're hurting Pittsburgh. You're hurting Duke. You are decimating the value of these athletic departments in the ACC. You are. Now, you might say, well, so what? Florida State, Clemson, and everybody else is getting what they want. Well, eventually, the half of the conference is going to wither. It's going to be devalued. It's going to sink. And are you going to get a better ACC media contract 10 years from now? You still got the decision whether you're going to actually improve the ACC or you're going to get out of the ACC. You are going to improve the value of the ACC, or are you going to get out of the conference? Clemson, Florida State, Miami, North Carolina. None of this improves the value of the ACC. In fact, it's going to harm it big time, because you're pulling the plug on the product of competition. Long term, you are destroying this conference by doing all this. If all this happens, you are destroying it. So eventually, you're still going to have to make that grand decision. Are we going to stay in this? Are we going to keep rearranging the decks on the Titanic so a Florida State can stay, a Clemson can stay? Or are we going to get out the Titanic and go somewhere else? Ryan Willie, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Well, I just honestly believe that the ACC is not going to last more than maybe 3 years. If not sooner, they'll dissolve. But getting back to the question you had for me as far as football goes, the only way he's coached next year is if he possibly wins maybe 5 games. If he goes 4-8 or 3-9, like I said yesterday, I believe he's gone. But if he wins 5-6 games and shows improvement and gets at least one of the trophies back, I think he's back next year.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's all I had, Greg.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for taking my call.
Got it. Thank you so much for the call. Brilliant, Ryan Willie. Great call, Evo Badger, Ryan Willie. Call me David. Big Ten fans are sounding like the SEC fans. Just because 2 or 3 teams are really good, they think the rest of the conference better than they are. I don't know. Have I really said any of that on this live show? I will say this. Vanderbilt, for example. Vanderbilt, that a lot of people just rip on.
Call from
Rick?
Rick, can you hold on for a moment? Rick, can
Yes,
you hold
we can.
on for a moment?
Yes, we can.
I appreciate it. So Vanderbilt ain't one of these top 2 or 3 programs in the SEC, correct? Correct? But you know what Vanderbilt is doing with all the money that the SEC, that Vanderbilt gets from the SEC? Do you see their baseball stadium? Do you see their baseball team? Do you see Mississippi State's baseball stadium? On and on and on. These athletic departments are healthy and growing, more exposure. They all help the SEC brand. No, they're not Georgia and Alabama. No, they're not Texas. Oh my God. But they still help the health of the SEC. Those athletic departments are not withering and dying, which helps Alabama, which helps Georgia, which helped Texas. Texas went into the conference to join a healthy, powerful conference, not to go in there and do bifurcation and divide the conference and have half the conference wither and die. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get it. Of course, the top brands in the SEC and the Big Ten, they're always going to make more money. They've always made more money. They're going to continue to make more money. But why would you want to cut the legs off of your bottom half of your conference? It makes no sense, other than to pull a power play and to say, "Yay, we are by." It doesn't help the conference. It doesn't help the conference. Why would it help the conference? It doesn't make any sense. The NFL. If the NFL made a rule tomorrow and said the Dallas Cowboys, because they bring in more media money than the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Cowboys should make $30 million more and the Jacksonville Jaguars should make $30 million less. Does that help the NFL? Really? Does it? No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. So, hey, Rick, go ahead. Thank you for your patience. The floor is yours.
Yeah, you summed it up nicely with Ryan Willie. And totally agree. If you're not equal, you're
unequal.
Correct. And that's really what it's all about. And the whole deal with the ACC was set months ago. What month did they agree to unequal revenue sharing?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
What month and year did they agree, the ACC, to unequal revenue sharing?
It was just recent. That's all I know. I don't remember the month.
That was their death knell.
Yeah.
That was it. When you do that, the game's over. So that's something to remember for other conferences.
Yeah.
Once you do that, once the camel gets his nose under the tent, it's over. Because you're agreeing that you're not equal.
Yeah.
You're agreeing you're a subservient school to a superior school. And when you do that, the game's over. So really, what has any of the ACC schools gained by doing that? What if they had said, no, we're not going to have unequal revenue sharing? How would that be different today?
Yeah.
They'd have a little bit more money, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't the Syracuse and the Boston College and the Wake Forest be getting more money than they are now?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's like, yeah, go ahead, sir. Yeah.
Well, there's really not much more than that. You've gained absolutely nothing. You were thinking when you agreed to unequal revenue sharing that, oh, we're going to keep the family together.
Yeah.
We'll take less so they can have more,
Yeah.
but we'll keep the family together. Wrong. There's never a family in the first place.
It's so in this bifurcated ACC, if they split divisions, if you got brands in one division, non-brands in the other. Okay, so you might have some games that are high viewership, right? Because you got big brands playing big brands, right? And then you're going to have more non-brand games playing more non-brand games, right? And you're going to have them you're going to have them on platforms that are not going to get the exposure. Okay?
That's correct.
And that's going to be part of your media agreement. That's going to be part of the end result. So it's again, it seems to me
the rich get richer.
But yeah, they're getting richer, but they're harvesting the field only a few more times. Like they're not growing the economic pie.
Oh, absolutely not.
This is a zero-sum game that they're playing.
But we know that the rich are only doing that to buy time until they can abandon you.
Yeah, that's all that's going on.
They're going to abandon you. You know they're going to abandon you.
Why would the bottom half of the schools, again, I get back to this, why would the bottom, and we are going to learn a lot about what the ACC meetings are going to be wild. And maybe, I'm just speculating, guys. I don't know. I'm just speculating based upon everything we've heard this morning. But you've got again, I get back to the bottom half of the school saying, look, you're killing us by 1,000 paper cuts here. Now you're gonna split us. Now our brand, our so-called non-brand is gonna take a branding hit by being in a non-brand division. Are you kidding me?
But
you
I'm
might as well
losing
just kill us now. Go ahead, sir.
I'm losing sympathy for the smallest schools because of what they've allowed themselves to happen to them.
Yeah.
Why did you do this? Why did you agree to this unequal revenue sharing? There's nothing positive that ever comes from it. And yet you went right along with it in your naivety. Then there's another aspect that I'm kind of curious your take on. When you get these contracts, like a Notre Dame unilateral contract with Clemson, the one you're talking about?
Yep.
What if next year Clemson becomes part of the SEC? What happens to that contract with Clemson and Notre Dame?
It has been reported that that contract will continue on between Clemson and Notre Dame.
If that's the case, if I'm the SEC, I'm taking that out of Clemson's cut of SEC money. I'm penalizing Clemson. Yeah, you can come into the SEC, but you're going to be penalized for that contract. And the same thing with Florida State and Notre Dame. And the same thing with, who's the third? Miami?
Yep.
Yeah. If you come into our you're not bringing that trash contract into our conference. We negotiate contracts. We, the SEC. So if you want to have that as your out of conference game, that's your business. But we're deleting that from your cut in the SEC home game payout. See where that could get messy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's get some other callers.
You got it. Appreciate it. If you missed it, we've had questions. Grateful Trojan. I missed the news this morning.
Call from
Rock and Rants.
Rock and Rant, can you hold on for a moment, please?
Sure can.
I appreciate it. I just want to recap real quick here. The big news that we're covering, besides the Clemson Notre Dame scheduling deal that goes on for 12 years, is this report from ESPN from Radakovich, the athletic director of Miami. The brands need to play each other more, Radakovich said. That's what has to happen. Do we divide into two divisions? Who gets to play Notre Dame? How are we well, that's been settled. How are we doing those kinds of things? And if the SEC goes to 9 conference games, we might have to go to 9 as well with the bifurcated brands and non-brands divide. That is the big news. Rock and Rant, I'm very, very curious on what you have to say about all this. The floor is yours.
Yeah, when I wake up at on my time and you're on the on YouTube, I'm scared. I'm like, did something really bad happen or did something really crazy happen? You never know which one's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
But real quick, and not to go against the previous caller, every school in all of the conferences, regardless of which conference, they are allowed to choose whatever scheduling agreement they want to do with the games that are outside of their conference. So if Clemson wants to do a scheduling agreement with Notre Dame and then goes to another conference, as long as they're not taking away from promised inventory, like the SEC Big Ten scheduling agreement, they can schedule whoever the hell they want, and SEC or Big Ten or any other conference is not going to have an issue because that's how all of those games work. So I'm not really sure about that last comment, and I have no horse in that game, in that race. So this is kind of, I think probably to me, just for a context thing to add it from Miami's fan base and hasn't really been brought up, is the fact that it's Radakovich, the one that's out there, who is, as if you've listened to me on calls since I started calling in, or even comments, I'm consistently frustrated because I would like Miami to be a little bit more out there and not just taking bullets generally.
Yeah.
We're proud members of the ACC, not joining the lawsuits.
Yeah.
Maybe they're playing chess. I think they're playing checkers, but maybe they really were playing chess. I don't really know, right? Ultimately, how everything has fallen has gone that way. But I do think of all the athletic directors, it wasn't Clemson's athletic director who's already sued the ACC. It wasn't Florida State's athletic director. It wasn't even Bubba Cunningham in North Carolina, who's talked about a lot of things around realignment and Super League, whatever, all that stuff. It was Radakovich, which Miami's always cautious. They don't want to be the bad guy generally because the bad guy thing is already there. It's already established, right, historically, right or wrong. So I personally, just trying to read tea leaves, no inside information, but I clearly pay attention to what Miami says in the broader context of things. I think this is way further down than people think. Because Radakovich he's not the guy out there trying to be a bad partner, right? Generally. He's not the one who's, he's, if anything, a political animal, and I'm hoping he's a strategic animal, ultimately, right? And there's even been questions about that. So the fact that it's him, even if he, didn't say, well, we're going to put North Carolina, Clemson, Miami, Florida State, et cetera, into one, maybe his definition of bifurcated divisions is different. 3 or 4 strong brands in each with 4 weak brands and crossover games. Who the hell knows? But it's probably what everybody's speculating on. And the fact that he's the guy, that's my only main thing. The fact that he's the one out there is intentional, right? It's a signal. It's not an accident. If anything, they're either too methodic or everyone's letting him be the one out there saying that. I don't think it's a accident that he's the one who said it. I don't think he accidentally said it. So, my gut tells me it's further down than people think. Now, whether or not this is the ACC restructuring equivalent of Brett Yormark going out there and throwing out things about private equity to line somebody up who isn't on board to get it done and to throw out, the public pressure kind of thing. I don't know. Yeah, and yes, some of the callers have brought up really good points of, well, these schools should say no, these schools should say yes. But, because of what might happen to their revenue. But ultimately, someone's playing from a hand of strength, right? And doing this, and the threat must mean something. Or the wheels have already turned far down, and we're just finding out things that are likely to happen. Nothing's ever done until it's done. Look at the House settlement, right? As a thing, probably will get done, but there's been some things on the road. But to me, the most interesting is that it's not that the concept came up, which even if none of us have thought about it before, it's that Radakovich of all of the people is the one saying it.
Yeah, and I started a live show saying that if Radakovich said this in public, it has been socialized in private. And everyone is trying to game out the reality. If the SEC goes to 9 conference games, that is going to trigger a lot of other stuff. We've already seen it. And I think, Rock and Rant, the ACC spring meetings is going to be wild. Absolutely wild. And the stories that are going to be reported on before the meeting, which basically just happened today, during the meetings, after the meetings, are going to be wild. My question is, there are different interests, of course, in the ACC. There's different factions. There are those who believe they have a great opportunity to jump to the P2 in the years ahead. There are schools in here in which, if this bifurcated 2-division, brand versus brand, non-brand versus non-brand division split, if that happens, there are some schools in the ACC that might be looking they might be looking with batted eyes towards the Big 12. My question is, is the ACC going to be able to keep it together during the meetings? Are we going to see spillage? That's the word I'm going to be using, Rock and Rant. Spillage. Are we going to be seeing people coming out and talking off the record, on the record, saying, boy, like spring meetings of a couple years ago when the Magnificent Seven stuff leaked out? Are we going to be seeing a kumbaya ACC, or are we going to be seeing spillage where people are going to be throwing elbows against each other during these ACC meetings? Go ahead, sir.
Well, there are two things the ACC is not known for: strategic media partnership deals with foresight into the future, and discretion. Right.
Yes.
So I would err on the side of either insanity or things have already been settled and we're blasted with news, but not disruption, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Either this is already happening so that you're arriving to formalize some aspect of whatever it might be, right? There's been the drumbeats, I don't know that we've seen here's an example, and maybe I've just missed it, but when SMU, Cal, and Stanford joined, we got the conference scheduling for the next X amount of years. It wasn't just 1 year. Like the SEC only did 1 or 2 years when that happened because they were still trying to figure out what would happen, whether it's going to be a ninth game. But ACC gave us X amount of years out.
Yes, sir.
I don't think we've seen an adjusted one that reflects hey, Notre Dame, you get to play Florida State, Clemson, and Miami, at least 2 of them every 3 years. That hasn't been rolled into that anything published along those lines, right? So some of these schedules have to be adjusted because Notre Dame isn't adding more ACC games, right? They're just substituting. So that means somebody who thinks they have Notre Dame on their schedule is not going to have Notre Dame on their schedule. So they have to still pull together a lot of these things that have come out in the last 3 months since the theoretical settlement. We actually haven't finally seen the formal settlement between FSU and Clemson go all the way through. The cases haven't been, completely handled technically, right? So not that I'm expecting anything to be surprising, but there's some cleanup on aisle 3 to still be done on the things we already knew prior to what's going on. So either that's all happening and they're coming together and the people have already resigned that they're staying together for the kids, right? That's what it feels like. Or are we in battered spouse syndrome where she's just going to keep, he or she is going to keep suffering at the hands of the other? Or is somebody just going to be so sick of everything, the drumbeat of the last year or two, starting with Florida State, Clemson, but the Magnificent Seven, everyone else, and resist because they've done the calculations that it almost doesn't matter at this point because they can't suffer anymore and they're just willing to, whatever adjustment was or was not done actually to the ESPN ACC deal, which we don't know again on that front either, other than they kept it going. Were any contingencies built into that we don't know that give protections to a Wake Forest and Boston College if more than 3 big brands left? Those are questions that all could still be coming out that could map up to this 2-division zone that we're talking about.
Yeah, it's great points.
I'm just stunned it's Radakovich. It's not normal for him to be the one out there on it. So I just wonder if it was a concerted plan. You would think, their commissioner would say something, but that would actually be acting like he's a commissioner worth listening to.
Yeah. If I had to put my chips in the middle of the table, I would put them on to where not everything has been ironed out in the ACC. There's no way that they're this organized. They're this unified and that they've all agreed to some sort of incredibly different future for the ACC based upon a bifurcation of the conference. I think we're going to get some elbows thrown. I think we're going to get some spillage. That's my guess.
The other thing, I don't think it's clear, Greg. I was just going to say, I don't know. We know, back in when we're all reading the ACC bylaws thing, and maybe you remember this, there was the things that were 2/3. There's the things that are 3/4 vote. We know dissolution is based off of the North Carolina laws, which is 50+1.
Yeah.
I don't think we know what the vote is, or I don't know what the vote percentage would be needed to go to this division thing, right? If it's really just 50+1, and you get the 8 or the 9 big brands out of the 17 to vote. Does anybody even have a choice? If it's only 50+1, like I don't know what vote percentage that one is.
Yeah, great question. And so let's say you split the divisions up, 9 in one, 8 in the other. Correct?
Right, because you don't have Notre Dame.
And you would have to have 9 brand schools in the brand division, so you can get the 9 votes. If all you needed was a majority, correct?
Yes, theoretically, if that's what the number is.
Okay,
or else it's 2/3, right?
Huh?
Or else it would be 2/3 is the next possible.
Yeah. But God, I tell you, if this happens, and if you're one of the 8 schools that are in the non-brand division, so-called non-brand division, boy, you are gonna wither. You're gonna wither and die, Rock and Rant. I mean, forget about just you're not gonna just play Notre Dame less. You're gonna be playing Miami less. You're going to be playing Florida State less. You're going to be playing Clemson. Whatever is in the big brand division, your ticket sales, everything is your exposure. What game slot? What slots you get? Right? You're going to be on the ACC network every week. Boy, if this happens, I felt so bad for Washington State and Oregon State. Right? I did.
Right.
I'm going to feel bad for these 8 schools, because even though they're going to be in a better position monetarily than Oregon State and Washington State, they're going to still be in an autonomous 4 conference. I get it, all that. But I think they would rather get their exit fee money, right? From the other schools leaving, and try to form their own future like Washington State and Oregon State. I think they would rather have that between the 2 options.
Yeah, because right now it's like that old Michael Douglas, Kathleen Turner movie, The War of the Roses, where you're like living in the same house and fighting for the chandelier.
Yeah.
And just trying to figure out how you don't kill each other. So I think, if you're Wake Forest, you might really just, let's get the money, let's roll the dice,
Yeah.
We have this cash, and we do our thing, and we'll be good for the foreseeable future. It'll be interesting to see. But, yeah, Amelia Island doesn't have it has some really nice hotels, but isn't super wild. So people stay in the same vicinity. So I think they'll, it's not like they're doing the Big 12 meetings in Las Vegas where people go to 25 different places for dinner and whatnot.
And Rock and Rant, Ron said in the chat room, SMU only came 3 points shy of winning the ACC football championship last year. SMU. I mean, what would SMU's position be at Amelia Island going into this week? I mean, they got to be thinking to themselves, we entered this conference, we gave up our media money for the next 9 years, our Tier 1 media money. We did great our first year in this conference, and now we're looking at all this. We're going to be playing Notre Dame less than we ever thought we would. We're going to be playing Florida State less, Miami less. We might be thrown into this so-called non-brand division. What the hell is going on? Yeah. That's probably what SMU is saying.
Right, and then that's the question of, what are they defining? Like, if they did this, what is the defining of the brand, right? So, like, from on the field last year, SMU is the top 3 brands in the conference, right? On the TV ratings, despite having a great year, they were, 15th, 16th, or 17th in eyeballs outside of the playoff regular season. So, like, how are they even, if they go down that road, what's the definition of, the haves and the have-nots? Is it the TV ratings? Is it the on-field performance? Is it, to use your favorite word, a blend, right? Like, how are they defining it? And it's really not about the top 3 or 4, right? It's about the whatever the next several are, and the definition. relegation and whatever the hell. It's crazy crap. Like, I will definitely say I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about the ACC going into two divisions ranked by like what brands were better in football versus others. So you said May was going to be crazy. Today is a good start for that.
Yeah. May is the month that matters. Thank you, Rocket Man. I appreciate the phone call, sir.
All right, man. Be good.
You got it. I tell you, we have Peek Around the Corner. We said in April chatters, May matters. We were going to get reports in May. Speculation on the future of college football was finally going to be reported by many of these national reporters. We have started out in the month of May going crazy here. Three major stories. One, Brett Yormark signing an extension to stay as the Big 12 commissioner through 2030, which means he's going to be the man leading the next Big 12 meeting negotiations and possibly the next Big 12 conference expansion. Brett Yormark is going to be the guy. That's one big story that we have covered. One major story that we have covered. Source confirmed to Front Office Sports. The next big story was Notre Dame signing a 12-year agreement with the Clemson Tigers. They're going to be playing every year all the way to 2038, and it doesn't matter if Clemson is a part of the ACC or not. According to the scheduling agreement, if Clemson changes conference affiliation, that agreement stays intact. That is where PATC, myself, we had to lead the show with taking the big L because I didn't think that was going to happen. No way did I think that was going to happen. But it happened, and we led the show with the big L. Clemson does sign that agreement with Notre Dame. 12 years supersedes any conference affiliation. Now, these scheduling agreements often get broken. But for now, Notre Dame and Clemson signed the 12-year to 2038. And then just a monster news coming out this morning. Right there, the brands need to play each other more. Radakovich, the Miami athletic director. What has to happen. Do we divide into two divisions? Who gets to play Notre Dame? How are we doing those kinds of things? And if the SEC goes to 9 conference games, we might have to go to 9 as well. With bifurcated brands and non-brands, dividing the ACC into brands and non-brands. Holy smokes. Again, as Rock and Rant said, Mr. Hurricane, with the phone call that just happened 10 minutes ago. It's not so much that this was said in public by an athletic director, which is a big deal. An ACC athletic director saying what he said in the open, in public, that is a big deal. But having Miami's athletic director, Radakovich, say it, that means that this has been talked about in private. It has been socialized. Is there a big plan? Amelia Island, Florida, ACC spring meetings. It is going to be crazy. It is going to be wild. We are going to be covering every bit of it here at Peek Around the Corner. We told you in April that May is going to be May matters. May matters. You've got 17 ACC full members going in to Amelia Island, and you've got Notre Dame coming on in as well. Some of those ACC schools are doing all they can to lay out the pathway to the P2, to the Big Ten and the SEC. Some of them are trying to figure out Plan B. The Plan B is to make it so more and more and more and more unequal revenue occurs in the ACC because it's right, because we deserve the money. While they're going to watch the bottom half of the conference wither and die, the ACC meetings is going to be crazy. It's going to be wild. We are going to be covering it all here at Peek Around the Corner. Please, if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends. When you do subscribe to our channel, open up those notifications because we can come on live at any time. I told you in May that we were going to have multiple days with multiple live shows. This could be the first one on May 6th. We've done a live show early in the morning. It is likely a possibility we're going to have to do another live show later today. May matters. This is the month of drama in college football. Please stick with us here at Peek Around the Corner. I want to thank everybody who has donated, who gave us donation to help us keep the lights on. John Grove, Ryan Willett, Moen, After Dark, Expedition Greg, Osceola Trucker, George Holton, and Daniel Gorby. Thank you so much. Thank you for the great phone calls, Rick and Rock and Ran and Ryan Willie and Kenny and everybody. Thank you so much for all your comments in the comments section. May, buckle up, brace for impact. Until next time, from all of us at College Football's Peek Around the Corner, to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.